Hello, I'm Lara Koçarsan and this is Newsfeed, your dose of what people are talking about online. Those images are of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials targeting workers at an electric vehicle factory owned by Hyundai and LG Energy in Georgia. The raid netted close to 500 workers, mostly South Koreans, who were allegedly employed by a contractor. Seoul has vowed to resolve the issue, and its top diplomat is expected to fly into Washington on Monday. But the arrests could jeopardize relations between the U.S. and one of its closest allies in Asia.
Warrant for this entire construction site, okay? We're Homeland Security, we have a search warrant for the whole site. We need construction to cease immediately. We need all work to end on the site right now.
Because of the raid, the South Korean government is very concerned about its company's investments in the US and the treatment of its people. The South Korean government is trying to figure out why the construction site was raided, saying that the detained South Koreans had entered the US on a B-1 temporary visitor visa. However, it is unclear if those workers subsequently tried to get a work visa or if they even knew that they couldn't work with the visa they had. But like we have seen from this administration, they're going after migrants regardless of their status. Hyundai did say that they're working with the US government in the investigation, but if this is how the US is going to treat workers, maybe more companies and potential employees should reconsider coming to the US. A lot of people were detained, which means kids probably went home with either one or both of their parents missing. These are people who are working, most likely paying taxes, and out of desperation, they took a job. This could all be a lot easier if the US government actually let people adjust their status.
There is no such thing as proximity to whiteness. We have the largest immigration rate in all of US history, and people who look like me often think, it's definitely about the Mexicans and Latinos. Well, guess what? They were Korean, so people who literally look like me. And the reason why I say that there's no such thing as proximity to whiteness is that a lot of people who look like me think that this whole immigration crackdown is about Latinos and brown people, forgetting that Asian people are people of color. Just barely a few weeks ago, South Korea committed to spending billions of dollars investing into the US economy. We're literally just barely 2 weeks ago, they pledged an additional $150 billion into the US economy. And that's already after South Korea committed to investing $350 billion investment from South Korea to the United States for things like shipbuilding, semiconductors, batteries, and energy.
This counts as the largest sting on alleged illegal immigrants since US President Donald Trump took office again in January. In a post on Truth Social, Trump called on foreign companies to respect US immigration laws and called on more firms to hire and train Americans. Critics say Trump is focusing on rounding up illegal workers to meet mass deportation quotas instead of dealing with violent criminals. Palestine 36, co-produced by TRT and directed by renowned Palestinian director Anne-Marie Jassir, has premiered at the 2025 Toronto International Film Festival. The film received a 15-minute standing ovation, during which the audience chanted Free Palestine. It explores the 1936 Palestinian uprising against imperial colonial rule through the story of Yusuf, a young man caught in political turmoil as British crackdowns intensify in Jerusalem and his village. With a notable cast, including Liam Cunningham, the movie has been selected as Palestine's official Oscar submission this year.
This is the beginning of it's the origin story of what's happening, what happened, and what's happening. It's the whole cyclical nature of it. But I think it's absolutely critical that, you know, that's where it started. That's how it's, you know, it's where we come from. It's generation after generation, and it is important. The film is set in the 30s, but it's very, very current, unfortunately.
I read the script that Anne-Marie sent me, and I'd never read anything like it. It led me to want to know more about that period of history, which really opened my eyes about sort of British accountability in the events during the Mandate years and the legacy of that.
Undersea cable cuts in the Red Sea have disrupted internet access in parts of Asia and the Middle East. Experts say it's not yet clear what caused the damage. But the disruptions come as Yemen's Houthis remain locked in a series of attacks targeting Israel over its war on Gaza. Tel Aviv has responded with airstrikes, killing top Houthi leaders. In early 2024, Yemen's internationally recognized government in exile alleged that the Houthis plan to attack undersea cables in the region, though the group has previously denied involvement. Undersea cables are one of the key backbones of the internet, alongside satellites and land-based networks.
Almost 99% of all internet traffic, including this video, runs on this hidden network of undersea cables. So the entire world is connected by these long-ass cables in the ocean, with 493 active cables coming up to a total of 1.5 million kilometers long. That's enough to go from Earth to the moon and back. Twice. These cables are installed by ship, which, yes, lays them directly on the sea floor by just kind of spooling them out from the back and moving very, very slowly. Now, these cables, they pretty thick, reinforced with multiple layers of protection, as sharks have been found chewing on them, and can sometimes be quite hefty on the inside, as you could imagine, with fiber optic cables nestled safely deep inside of them where the data transfer actually happens. So whenever you message someone across the world, your message is literally traveling through these cables at about the speed of light, which traverses through the deepest depths of our oceans in a couple seconds before getting to the recipient. Accidental breaks in the cables do happen every so often, and they either send an underwater drone like this to repair it, or they just pull that part of the cable out of the water and fix it on a ship before setting it back down. They obviously have a lot of backup cables and alternate paths in place, so even if some evil villain were to cut one of these cables to destroy society, it would just cause internet slowdowns in the area, similar to a traffic jam.
As you have just heard, 99% of global internet traffic flows through underwater cables. That makes them prime targets whenever geopolitical tensions rise. So why not just use satellites? They seem more efficient and safe, right? Well, think again.
It comes down to three main things. First up, it comes down to latency. That's the time it takes for your data to make the trip. Through satellites, your signal has to travel all the way to space and back, while cables take a shortcut across the ocean. That's why when I send this text message to someone in Europe, it only takes about 100 milliseconds through a cable. Through a satellite, more like 700 milliseconds. Second, these cables are data powerhouses. A single modern cable can carry up to 200 terabits per second. That's like downloading 25,000 HD movies every second. They're actually more reliable than satellites. They're protected from weather, solar storms, and space debris.
Interpreters and computer scientists are working to overturn the exclusion of African languages from artificial intelligence systems. The African Next Voices project has created open access data sets in 18 dialects, including those from Kenya, South Africa, and Nigeria. They'll be used to develop tools including speech-to-text systems, translation, and conversational AI. The continent carries a linguistic richness with over a quarter of the world's languages stemming from the motherland. But lots of dialects are primarily oral and lack sufficient digital data. And tools like ChatGPT rely heavily on data from dominant written languages, such as English or Chinese.
Language is the entry point for a lot of people, and we have so many languages in Uganda and really Africa as a large, and many of these languages are not really there's not a lot of material around them in terms of whether that is writing and all. So I think one of the first things we really need to do is to get players, whether that is in industry, especially the private sector, because I'm a believer it's really private sector which has to drive this kind of growth, to really come and see, can we start to annotate these languages? Can we start to have content in these particular languages? Because for AI to work, you cannot ignore everything which has to happen, which is the data.
When we talk about AI and language models, we often forget one thing. Language is culture. It's not just about translating words. It's about preserving identity, recognizing history, and giving voice to communities that have always been left out. If a model doesn't understand a particular language, Setswana, Sisulu, or Setsonga, then it's not just missing a language, it's missing a people. Global models need to be multilingual because representation in AI is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's how we make sure that no one is erased in the digital future. And I believe that small languages matter. African languages matter.
Language embodies identity and heritage, and omitting indigenous dialects from AI risks eroding culture. And while the data set is a breakthrough, it covers only a fraction of Africa's linguistic diversity. Major written languages like Swahili, Yoruba, and Amharic are supported in many mainstream AI tools, such as Google Translate, OpenAI's GPT, Meta's models, and Microsoft Translator. But they are subject to limitations, such as mistranslations, variations in meaning, and a general bias toward English sentence structures. Scaling up will demand further investment and collaborations. There is a new word that's being used to describe robots that's creating a stir online. While the internet is talking about how the word clanker is offensive, it got the newsfeed team wondering whether an object can be insulted. In order to decide what's entitled to feelings, let's start with what the word actually means.
As the rise of AI and robots continues and robots are doing more and more human things, people have began to create parody memes and skits about what the future with robots looks like as they are not human. There have been parody skits about Gen Z being the new boomers when their kids bring home an AI significant other, and other skits about what the world would be like when the robots are experiencing prejudice because of being robots and not humans. Now, back in July, there was a video where somebody was filming one of those cleaning robots in the store and was yelling to "Keep it pushing, you dirty frickin' clanker." Clanker. I hate clankers. The word clanker is being deemed as a robophobic term and is being used humorously towards robots. It's meant to be an insult towards robots, and that's all it means. Now, for those of you Star Wars fanatics, there is a scene in Star Wars Clone Wars cartoon where a droid is called a dirty, wire-backed clanker, which is where some are saying that this phrase originated.
One of the weirdest things about you guys using clanker as a slur is that you're trying to dehumanize robots, but at the same time you're paradoxically humanizing them. I mean, think about it, we have plenty of derogatory terms for non-humans, like mongrel for dog or vermin for wild animals. And yet nobody would say that those are slurs, even though we do generally agree that clanker is a slur. And that's because the idea of a slur requires a high degree of anthropomorphization in order to work. It's meant to insult a people group, so you first have to elevate the robot to near personhood before you can put it down. This is literally reflected in how clanker draws its power from analogy to the actual N-word, or how the similar term wireback comes from the slur for Mexican people. That implicitly places clanker on an equal footing with a human minority you don't like, which is already weird in and of itself. But now consider the alternative phrase cogsucker, which is also trending. That's clearly meant to be insulting, but it's not a slur because it doesn't equate itself with a specific kind of person. Same with the terms mongrel or vermin. They're demeaning to animals, but they don't claim to be slurs. So what you're actually doing with clanker is you're personifying AI just enough to treat it as subhuman. And I recognize that it's supposed to be a joke, but the more we mentally legitimize artificial intelligence as human, even subconsciously, the easier it is to believe in misinformation or fall into a loop of AI psychosis.
We end the show with a total lunar eclipse that gave the globe a stunning blood moon. An eclipse happens when Earth photobombs the sun-moon selfie, casting its shadow on our satellite. Luckily for stargazers, this cosmic show has been visible from Asia, Europe, and Africa. Enjoy and see you soon.